Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, the complicated task to unseat the long-serving Israeli Prime Minister appears to be over, as Benjamin Netanyahu has been given the green light to form Israel's next government for the fourth time in just 2 years. Now that Washington appears to have restored fractured relations with Palestine, I'll be asking Myrav Zonzain, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group in Tel Aviv, what's in store for the troubled region in the Middle East. And executive business coaching is just short of becoming a $3 billion industry and has seen a huge surge in demand during the global lockdowns. I'll be joined by Eni Obi, a personal development coach in London. She'll be sharing insights on a sector that managed to lure Prince Harry into his first post-royal appointment. Then later, I'll be reporting on the biggest company stories of the week. As always, we'll start the show with business news from here in the UK, where data released on Tuesday showed that Britain returned to growth in February after a sharp contraction in GDP of 2.2% at the start of the year. Output grew by a modest rate of 0.4%, lower than economists had forecast, but there were no surprises it wasn't a giant leap, considering there were no changes to restrictions between January and February. A strong housing market boosted the construction sector by 1.6%, though consumer-facing services fell short, with just a 0.2% gain. In separate data released by the Office for National Statistics, during the second month of the new Brexit border controls, there was a £3.7 billion rise in exports between Britain and the EU, stronger than the dramatic £5.7 billion drop in January, but still 15% down on pre-Brexit levels. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, we'll get to the GDP data later, but did you manage to get a haircut this week?
I didn't, but you've seen so many queues, haven't you, both in real life and on TV, of these hairdressers and barbers that have been closed for months and months and months. And I think men especially, because hair seems to grow faster on men, or men seem to need to have a haircut every couple of weeks, whereas girls can go a few months, especially showing off on social media the fact that they've been transitioned or transformed into something else. And that's been the case across the sector, really. Restaurants and shops, the same kind of thing. It seems to be a sort of bank holiday feel every day, because obviously you've got a large part of the population still furloughed, but now they've got this money that they've been saving for months and months, and they haven't been able to go to shops to buy things, and restaurants as well. So we've seen sort of this crazy sort of few days, really. And Monday, the first day that was opened, was 101% up on the Monday the year before in terms of takings, and we're obviously going to see the figures later in a few months' time as to just the kind of effect it's had, but certainly complete change from before. And I think some people will be fearing, and rightly so, are we not just setting ourselves up for another lockdown now? I think the argument against that is that this is just allowed outdoors, and obviously the virus is less sort of prevalent when it's outdoors, so you can catch it more indoors. And also, a large part of the population has been vaccinated at the moment, so I don't think people need to fear too much. But there will be people with mental health issues who are just sort of, are struggling to come to terms with the boom, life is back to normal again after a year and a bit of sort of slowing down and staying at home. So it's good to see, and it's good to see, especially for leisure and hospitality sectors that have been struggling so much. And hopefully this will sort of be a lifeline for them that they need, as well as the government support. If we go to GDP, some good news in February was that the UK economy returned to growth, which I think a few people weren't expecting to happen so soon. A couple of reasons for this, but as GDP rose by 0.4% in February, not much, of course. It is still down from this time last in 2020, but it's a step in the right direction. Economists saying that part of this is because the vaccine rollout is going so well, and part of it is also because things had started to open up in February. So I think people generally being optimistic and maybe spending a little bit more money than they had been before. The head of the economics at the British Chamber of Commerce, though, said hope of a sustained consumer-led revival may prove too optimistic, as the economic scarring caused by COVID may trigger a renewed reluctance to spend as government support winds down. So, as the furlough scheme comes to an end, as various other loan schemes come to an end, people may spend much less because obviously that kind of that support is taken away. So I think it's good news, and I think what we're seeing outdoors is good news. But I think to sort of put a blanket statement that we're out of the woods yet would be too soon. So fingers crossed, people keep spending and the weather remains good, and people keep going out to restaurants and bars and getting their hair cut. I still have a few weeks, I think, until I'm going to get mine done.
Simon, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, over to our first topic. The Biden administration has announced its intention to restore funding for a UN agency that provides comprehensive humanitarian aid to Palestinians, a move that has been welcomed by government officials in the state, but opposed by Republicans and officials in neighbouring Israel. Meanwhile, the embattled Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been tasked by President Reuven Rivlin to form the country's next government for the fourth time in just 2 years. Neither he nor opposition parties won enough votes in last month's polls to be sure of forming a government. Israel's longest-serving Prime Minister is currently standing trial on charges of fraud, bribery and a breach of trust. He has denounced the accusations against him as a politically motivated witch hunt. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Myra Zonzine, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group. She's joining me from Tel Aviv in Israel. Myra Zonzine, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. What are your thoughts then? The Biden administration is trying to restore fractured relations with Palestine. One of the ways they're doing that is restoring aid. This is in addition to the $15 million assistance Washington have provided for COVID-19 relief. Is this going to help the fractured relationship?
Well, that has yet to be seen, but certainly Biden's move is a big step in the right direction. It's a positive step. It shows that he's not Trump, and so it basically removes the punishment that he put on the Palestinians. It's also a recognition that the Palestinians are human beings and there are also refugees. And so this is a very positive step, but I don't know if it goes far enough to restore relations or to really move anything on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict front. That has yet to be seen.
What has the response been with Biden's move on the ground? Are they as sceptical as most observers are?
Well, on the Palestinian side, I think it was a welcomed move, obviously, and they're getting ready for their own elections and they have a lot to deal with. But it's obviously they're happy about that. And on the Israeli side, the ambassador was very clear that he believes the UNRWA is an anti-Semitic organization and they have come out against the move. And this is kind of par for the course for how Israeli policy on Palestinian issues has been for quite some time.
Most recently, Netanyahu has emerged once again as a leader with 9 lies. He's been given the green light to form Israel's next government. What's your reaction to that recent outcome?
I mean, it's important to remember that he is on trial for corruption. He has to be in court several times, pretty regularly now. And so in any, democratic country, usually a prime minister would step down in such a case. And he has normalized the notion of continuing to be in power despite that fact. So he has also lost a lot of legitimacy. At the same time, he failed once again to win a majority. The problem is that nobody else has come out strong enough either on the other side. And right now in Israeli politics, this kind of cycle of continued elections, and even if he does build a coalition, it's doubtful that it will last for very long because of the way the cards have set themselves up. And so what we're seeing here is political paralysis that's reflecting some kind of political gridlock in Israel's vision for what it should do. I mean, it's really a very good reflection of the fact that Israel doesn't have a viable policy moving forward, both domestically and internationally. So it's a real issue, and I'm not sure what will happen. He has until May 4th to get this coalition together. It's hard to tell what would happen. He continues to be very powerful, but at some point, something's got to give, I think.
Well, absolutely, something has got to give. I think even Bibi's supporters are looking for some sort of change. You've written quite extensively about Israel's political gridlock, and you also said that whatever the outcome of the last month's election, it wouldn't fundamentally change Israel's right-leaning stance on the region. What are the implications of this right-leaning stance? Even if there was a change of leader, their position wouldn't change on Palestine.
Right. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. But when it comes to Palestine, Israel is very, very right wing. Even the so-called left or the center left don't offer an alternative vision. The two-state solution is a non-existent. The Palestinians are non-existent. The two-state solution is not something that anyone is talking about anymore. The notion of withdrawing settlements is almost non-existent as well. So the body politic in Israel is it's not even that it's anti-Palestinian. It doesn't even come up in conversation. It doesn't come up in the election at all. And then when violence comes around, it comes up, and then, of course, it becomes even more reactionary and right-wing. And when we don't hear about violence, of course, there's violence against Palestinians. So there's a real vacuum. The deterioration of the left in Israel has been seen in each and every of these elections. And on the Palestinian issue, even if Netanyahu does not become the prime minister again and somebody else takes the hold, there might be a bit of an improvement, but there could also be the opposite. It could be a different right-wing leader who has less experience and feels that he needs to show himself and be even stronger and could even be more offensive than Netanyahu, because Netanyahu happens to be a prime minister who likes the status quo and doesn't go, for wars when he doesn't have to. So it's kind of a wild card about what will happen, but there has to be a lot more change on the ground before an election will produce a different result.
Well, absolutely. You talk about vacuum and change. Some would say that's exactly the same in Palestine, and that's what the Palestinians need. Lots of surprise when Abbas announced that there would be elections coming up. I believe it is happening next month. Do you foresee that there could be a change? Could Abbas really start handing down to his successor?
I think it's doubtful, but right now I don't even think it's clear that these elections will actually take place. I think it's most people don't believe they're going to take place when he says they will. On the other hand, it's gone this far, so it might actually happen, and it's important for it to happen. But it's also important to point out that these elections would not represent the entire Palestinian population. It would only represent those in the occupied territories. East Jerusalem, it's still not clear if they could vote. And the Palestinian people are a diaspora people, and they are looking towards these elections for a way to kind of get and bridge over some of the divides, try to come up with a new way to approach their national self-determination and their aspirations, because Israel has been very successful in crushing those aspirations. And so these elections are in some way provide hope. Hamas is expected to do quite well. And last time around in 2006, we saw how the international community and how Israel responded to that. So even if these elections do go through, it's hard to imagine that the world will accept them as a democratic election and respect the results. And we have to see what happens. I think also that kind of impacts how the Biden administration is kind of in this holding pattern because of all these elections. He doesn't really know what he's up against. And I think Abbas is still very much trying to hold on to power. He's extremely old at this point. And so everybody needs to think about what will happen once he's no longer with us. And that's the big question.
Absolutely. Myra, before I let you go, I've got to ask about the elephant in the room, which is COVID. I was saying to you off camera that Israel is being, hailed as, the vaccination program that we should all be following. Of course, not the same in Palestine. What's it exactly like on the ground? What's the mood in the room?
Yeah, so in Israel, having come recently back from the U.S., it's like a parallel universe. Many are vaccinated. Over 5 million have received the first shot. It's a population of about 9 million. So it's over half of the population at this point. Whereas in the Palestinian territories, especially in Gaza, there's now an uptick. It's kind of like, even though it's one epidemiological area, there are two very different systems of vaccination processes. And, that is going to affect the situation here. But luckily, the vaccine has proven in studies that Israel has done so far to be very, very effective. So much so that even those who are vaccinated cannot carry it and bring it to others. So, of course, Israelis are very hopeful and things are really opening up here. The problem is that Palestinians are not getting the vaccine at nearly quick enough a rate.
Yes, gosh, that's a sad tale of two states. But thank you, Myra Zonzain, Senior Analyst at the International Crisis Group. Thanks so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. Thank you, Myra. Coming up on Channel's Business Global, I'll be discussing the $3 billion executive business coaching industry with the personal development coach, Eni Obi. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a moment, I'll be speaking with the personal development coach, Eniobi. But before then, here's some company news for you. Cybersecurity firm Darktrace plans to float in London following a trading update that reveals the company's revenue surged to almost £146 million thanks to the pandemic. The British-based tech firm did not provide details of the pricing, but it is reportedly seeking a valuation of up to £3 billion. The IPO is being described as a huge win for the UK's thriving tech sector. The cyber firm, founded in 2013, has witnessed a higher demand for its services due to the shift to home working over the past 12 months. Darktrace makes the vast majority of its revenues from subscriptions, which have more than doubled in the last 2 years. Microsoft has agreed to buy voice recognition pioneer Nuance Communications in an all-cash transaction valued at $19.7 billion. Nuance was one of the early developers of speech recognition artificial intelligence, and its technology was used to power the voice responses in Apple's virtual assistant, Siri. The acquisition is an inroad for Microsoft into the lucrative telehealth sector, which has thrived during the global lockdowns. The tech giant had previously worked with the speech tech company on AI software that helps healthcare professionals capture patient discussions and integrates them into electronic health records. The deal is Microsoft's second largest in its history after its acquisition of the networking site LinkedIn in 2016. The Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey has said that the social media giant will be opening its first Africa office in Ghana. Dorsey is just one of several tech billionaires seeking to make an inroad into one of the world's fastest growing markets. According to the web analytics company StatCounter, internet use per population is around 39% on the continent, against a world average of 59%. In a statement, Twitter said it's now actively building a team in Ghana to be more immersed in the rich and vibrant communities that drive the conversations taking place every day across the continent. According to bosses, the decision to kick off its Africa expansion with Ghana stems from the country's dealing with the African Continental Free Trade Area and its openness towards the internet. Now, to our next topic. Have you written your goals for this week, for next month, or for the rest of the year? If not, there's no need to worry, as you can hire someone who can gently prod you in the right direction. And if you choose to do this, you wouldn't be alone, as the life coaching sector is almost a $3 billion global industry. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by the personal development coach, Eniobi. Eniobi, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Prince Harry has probably become one of the most famous life coaches in the world after the position he managed to bag last month. Can you describe what exactly it means to become a life coach and how it varies from, joining therapy?
Absolutely, Gianella. First of all, thank you for having me. So therapy is more about moving away from something. It's about solving a problem that already exists and taking you away from that. While coaching is more about moving you towards something, it's more about desires, it's more about outcomes, it's more about goals. And so it's moving you towards something as opposed to away from something, which therapy is. Therapy fixes a problem, coaching fulfills a desire.
Okay, it's now becoming almost a $3 billion sector. I was doing my research before this interview. It's valued at $2.85 billion, and it's obviously growing. You only have to go on Instagram or Twitter and see people posting all of these pretty positive affirmations. I'm sure you're not surprised that there's been a surge in interest during the lockdown.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So if there's one thing that COVID forced on people, it's the requirement to press the reset button on our lives. A lot of people use the opportunity with all the death and the devastation and the destruction, Juliana. It was the perfect opportunity for people to press the reset button on their lives and look for how they want to live their life, look for what the real worth and the possibilities of their lives. So people use the pandemic. It was a great opportunity, as I say. So no, I'm not surprised. And a lot of people are moving towards that because they want to live a life that they desire rather than a life that's been that's expected of them, or a life that they've inherited, and they didn't realize just how far they've gone off track from who they are. So I think that's one of the, sad to say, but that's one of the positives, if you like, that has come out of the pandemic. Yes.
Absolutely. I can only imagine that it's could I say an elitist sector? Are some of your clients, elites? Are they the kind of people, that have to afford it? Kind of like, come on, make sure you get to your tennis lesson at 5 o'clock, violin for the kids at 2, make sure you get up, have your nutritious drink. Are those the kind of, individuals that are purchasing this kind of time?
I think there are all sorts of individuals. People are purchasing coaching for all sorts of reasons. There's health reasons, there's financial reasons, there's career, there's love. People want fulfillment, Juliana, in all aspects of their life. So people are looking for somebody to get them to a place within themselves that they can't necessarily go by themselves. Me specifically, my niche is professional women who are looking to discover all of who they are so that they can be all of who they are, and they can live a life of fulfillment, and they can unleash dreams and possibilities in their lives. But as I say, people are looking for coaching for all aspects of their life.
Absolutely. I suppose there shouldn't really be any critiques of this sector, but there are a few, and I suppose this is all about the unregulated sector. I'm sure some of us as well poke nose at individuals that are always posting positive affirmations, but you know what they get up to in their private lives. And we're not talking about some of the well-known as spiritual leaders. But, are there concerns, especially somebody like you who has devoted your time? You're a personal development coach. You're an acclaimed author. You've been working with some of the biggest leaders in the sector. Does it concern you sometimes that perhaps it has become a completely unsaturated, unregulated industry where anybody can go online and, call themselves a life coach, but they just don't have any in-depth understanding about what individuals may or may not need?
So you've actually raised a really great point, and it's a major concern in the industry right now, Juliana. So I myself have fallen prey to coaches that have not lived up to expectations. I myself have been disappointed with people that I have signed up to help me. I think what people need to do, people need to work off recommendation. Recommendation is the key here because, as you rightly pointed out, it's an unregulated area. So how do you know what you're getting and who you're working with? Work off recommendations. Get feedback from people who you know and you trust. Don't go to a stranger because then you really are at risk of being exploited. And also, I think it's imperative when you sign up with a coach to work off agreed outcomes, agreed results. So it's not about the process, it's about the outcome. It's not about me saying to you, I'll work with you for 6 months. I don't care how long. What are we going to get at the end of the 6 months? I should say, though, here, Juliana, it's important to say that there's also responsibility on the part of the person being coached. There is action to be taken on the part of the person being coached. So it's not all on the coach, because if I coach a person and they don't then follow up or follow through, I can't be held responsible or liable. So it's a two-way thing. But absolutely, work off feedback, work off recommendation, and work off agreed results.
Wow, gosh. If I got my time right, that was about 10 minutes. Hopefully I won't get a bill of $1,000, but it certainly would have been worth every single cent. Eni Obi, personal development coach. Thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. Thanks, Eni. Sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.